Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining me today for my presentation on media piracy. To begin with, let's look at a couple of important definitions that I feel are needed in order to understand what media piracy is. The first definition being intellectual property, which is the category of property that includes intangible creations of the human intellect. Basically, things like books, movies, TV shows, video games, ideas, inventions, and facts. Things that are intangible that you cannot physically hold in your hands, but you still want to make your property. And when you make them your intellectual property, nobody is allowed to copy, distribute, or sell them without your permission under penalty of law. And there are three basic subcategories of intellectual property: copyrights, patents, and trademarks. And in this presentation, we'll be focusing mainly on copyrights. Copyrights focus solely on pieces of content like literary works, paintings, photographs, drawings, films, music, choreography, sculpture, video games, etc. Things created mostly for entertainment purposes or artistic purposes. And copyright does not protect ideas, inventions, and facts. Those fall under patents and trademarks. Moving on, now that we know what copyright is, we should be able to infer what copyright infringement is. Copyright infringement: when you infringe on somebody's copyrighted material, you are violating intellectual property laws and selling, distributing, or copying somebody's copyrighted content without their consent. This is known as copyright infringement or media piracy. And now we can also infer that not all pirates look like our friend Patchy the Pirate here, and some pirates, the internet pirates, the media pirates, which we will be talking about in this presentation, are looking more like our friend here in the suit and head sock on his computer, downloading illegal content. Now that we know what media piracy is, let us try and ask ourselves the deeper philosophical question behind media piracy. Is it ethical? Now, I'm sure many of you are already firmly of the belief that media piracy is completely and utterly unethical and should be done under no circumstances. But here we're going to try and look at both sides of the equation, both sides of the coin. We're going to look at a couple of pros, look at some cons, and we'll try and find out once and for all if media piracy really is as unethical as everybody seems to think it is. First, let's take a look at a couple of pros here that maybe will come to show that media piracy isn't as totally unethical as everybody thinks it is. The first pro here is that many pirates actually go on to purchase content that they truly enjoyed. So let's say you're a pirate and you illegally download a video game. You play the game and you loved it so much that you decide to support the content creator by purchasing the game legally. But if you play the game and you don't like it, well, then you don't support the content creators. And in this way, only the games that are good and only the content creators that are good stay afloat and make more good games. This is the rationale that many pirates use. I have heard it firsthand from a couple of pirates myself. They actually say this. Now, I don't particularly agree with this rationale, as taste is subjective, and what somebody finds good, somebody else will find terrible. However, this is an actual reason that many pirates give in order to rationalize their actions, so I wanted to put it in there anyway. The second pro that I have here is that pirated content can help that content reach a wider audience. As an example, let's take a look at My Little Pony here. So let's say that you are a grown man living in your mother's basement, and for a while now you've been hearing about the show My Little Pony, and that a bunch of grown men such as yourself love the show. These men are called bronies. And you're curious as to what makes these grown men flock towards the show in the way that they do. So what do? You don't want something like this showing up in your credit card history. So instead, you go online to the Pirate Bay and you torrent the entire first season of My Little Pony. So you watch the show, and by golly, you love it. You'll love it so much, in fact, that you go out and tell all your friends about it, online or in real life. You tell them, and you share your love for the show with everyone. And this might actually lead some people to be curious too. And these people might go out and actually legally purchase the seasons of My Little Pony. Alright? And in this way, pirating the content actually helped My Little Pony reach a wider audience than it would otherwise have ever been able to reach. This is, of course, just an example, but it does usually work like this, where pirating a piece of content can help to reach a wider audience. The third and final pro that we have here is that piracy does not really affect the economy, not nearly as much as everybody seems to think that it does. According to the Cato Institute, the amount of losses attributed to piracy in the United States every year is only around $446 million. Now, this might seem like a large number at first, but it's really not when you take into consideration that this number encompasses the entire scope of copyrighted materials. So this $446 million takes up movies, video games, music, TV shows, all of that goes into this number. So the amount that each of these mediums is losing is really not that much at all, and it doesn't make that big of a difference in the economy. So now let's look at a couple of cons. The first one being that while the economy might not suffer from piracy, struggling and up-and-coming artists and creators certainly do struggle from it. So a more established, a more well-known artist might not even blink at somebody stealing their content. But if you're new and you're trying to make a name for yourself, this is the only revenue you get, and you need all the support you can get if you want to make it big. And pirating from them is effectively ruining any chance they have of becoming famous. The next one we have is that piracy is theft. You might not think of it like that, but it is. It's basically the same thing as stealing like a bag of chips from the grocery store. You wouldn't do that, would you? But on the internet, it's just so easy and simple to do it that nobody thinks twice about it. You're not really hurting anyone by stealing something from a grocery store. It's not going to destroy the grocery store. It's the same for the pirating content. The third con that I have is that it is illegal. Now this might seem rather obvious, but I shall explain it anyway. When you live in a country, you agree to live by the laws of that country, and you are bound by those laws. And when you break the laws, you are being unethical, no matter how small or insignificant the law may seem. And yes, when you pirate a piece of content, you are breaking the law. Now this might seem rather trivial, but I think it's a good enough reason as to why it's unethical. Piracy is certainly not a localized event. It happens all around the globe, as everybody does it. I have pirated content at some point in my life. I'm sure that you have as well. Some child in Scandinavia on his father's computer, and maybe even a grandpapa in China learning how to use the internet for the first time. It happens everywhere, but I think that's okay, as most people, I think, have enough common sense to know not to become full pirates, and they still purchase most of their content legally. Because, of course, if everybody became full pirates, the system would crash, and no new content would ever be produced. So now we have reached the end of our little presentation, and now is a time that we can look back and reflect on all that we have learned and the questions that we have asked. Media piracy. Is it ethical? Is it unethical? We looked at the pros and the cons, the goods and the bads, the rights and the wrongs. We also asked ourselves if it's okay to pirate sometimes, or is pirating always unethical even if you still purchase most content? These are the questions pondered, and the answers are for you, dear viewer, to decide. Thank you. Here we have the credits for my sources and pictures used. This is the first page. the second page, and the third page. If you want to get a better look at them, then please pause the video. Thank you all for watching.